Johnny, what were
So
you
I
gonna
got
say?
a question for the table, actually, so we can all chime in on this
Cool.
here. It's like, what is the line between the story you're trying to tell and the changes you make based upon creative feedback, right? Because you have to think about it. Are you writing for the short-term reader, or are you thinking of your work as a long-term legacy, something long-standing? So I guess what's the line for everybody, you know, when you're taking that constructive criticism? Anybody wants to chime in, feel free.
I hate to be like who's it? I think Alan Moore said this, where it's like where the reader doesn't know what they need. Like, you know, like he said something along those lines, right? Like where and like I feel like, you know, if you have a story to tell, you could bend a little bit on certain things, aspects of it. But if you're dead set in telling a story that means something to you, or, you know, you have in a certain way in your head, I think you're just going to do it, like whether the feedback is good or not. And then if you get obliterated after that, I mean, I guess, you know, it's like, you know, I guess that's how it's perceived, you know.
I would go by instinct. I will kind of play it by ear. It's almost like, you know, I'm a big wrestling fan, right? So I love hearing stories about, you know, wrestlers who, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen during the match. We called an audible because it just felt right. You know, the crowd was asking for it. They were into it. And we decided, you know what, screw the original ending. We're going to go this way instead. And it worked out better. So I think for me, it's instincts. It's more like, okay, well, if I do have the overall vision, right? If I have the story I want to tell, and if I succeed in delivering that first story that pretty much establishes the character, the world, all of it. So the sequel will have to be something where I'm going to have to listen to the fans and say, okay, and keep it within the line, keep it within the lane, and not steer off too far off, which is what can tend to happen a lot with especially with characters that readers end up liking, and then you change drastically. So I go by instinct and audible, you know, play it by ear.
Yeah. Well, that also sometimes your characters take the reins too, and steer the book in a different direction than you were thinking too, you know.
Julius, how do you explain the storyline between John Henry and Mae Young when they had a kid?
That was the classic example of this man saying, "I'm going to do this, and I don't care."
I don't even know what you're talking about, Harry, but it's funny.
This 80-year-old plus woman gave birth to a rubber arm. I don't know how that.
Wait, what? What is this?
Ridiculous.
It was an era where wrestling was really stupid.
Yeah, that was a moment for wrestling fans to look to kind of. It was very shameful. I was like, I can't believe this, man.
We packed it away with Doink the Clown and the Gobbledygook.
Right. Oh, it's from the Doink the Clown era. Say no more. I was already out by then.
I'm more classic wrestling myself, like back in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah, same here.
That's awesome. How about you, Nandor? Did you have any like take on that?
Yeah, well, I agree with you, Keith. Like I'm kind of the mindset that, you know, I try to put as much care and as much thought into my stories as I possibly can, and try to make it as exciting for me as I possibly can. And so I welcome feedback, and I'm looking for more so than criticism on the creativity. I'm kind of looking for criticism on the technical side of things, like how the book is presented, how the grammar is, how the punctuation is, you know, and like really kind of the pacing of it. But like on the, like with what actually happens in the story, I'm usually like 90% to 95% sure that I've cracked it, you know, and I'm confident in my ability to share the story that I want, because, you know, it's like I need to make sure that the story I'm telling is the one I want to tell, and that also I'm not just, you know, kind of pandering to what the audience wants or what they're looking for, you know, and I want to like stay true to my creative vision. But I still welcome it. And if it doesn't help me with that particular story, it's definitely going to help me with my next stories, you know. And that's something that you as writers, we can always use, because there's always going to be a next story. And if there's something about the way you spent too long on this scene, or this didn't really pan out the way that a reader wanted or whatever, you can use that and you can go, okay, when I apply this to my next books, how can I make this more exciting or more accessible or more enjoyable for the reader, for an overall like better reading experience. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
That's
How about
cool,
you,
yeah.
Johnny? You had posed the question, but did you have an answer on that as well?
Well, I think everybody's point's kind of the general idea. You know what I mean? And I think everybody's opinion is a little bit different in the sense of how they approach it or how they view it. Me personally, I would say that like Nandor said, we welcome the creative feedback. You kind of have to, but it also depends on where it's coming from. Is it coming from a reader, or is it coming from a creative peer? Creative peer sees things differently than the way a reader would see things. I always enjoy having a reader come to me at the table after having read a book going, I love this part of the book, or I love this part, or are you going to do this? PlasticCityComicCon, somebody told me I should do issue 3 of The Pond, which was only meant to be a 2-issue series. That opened up my brain going like, oh my God, like this guy wants more. And I was like, I thought I was done with that. You know what I mean?
Did it get you thinking about doing another?
It did.
Really?
It did. Only for the fact of I'm trying to find better ways to make a book that has a higher price tag.
Okay.
Right. So instead of selling $5 floppies, Pond's 2 issues. So it doesn't collect very well into anything bigger than like kind of just an oversized comic, So how can I expand upon that? How can I make it maybe a hardcover? You know what I mean? Something to, make it a little bit more enticing at the table.
Yeah, more deluxe.
Yeah, exactly. Something deluxe. And maybe along those lines, it comes with a short story or something to that effect, or maybe some prose, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that way you can sell like a thick book, right? Or like
a nice thick
hardcover
book, right?
or
And that's when you're spending a lot of money to vend at a convention, at one of the bigger conventions, it's really hard to get to that number to cover your table in the least.
Definitely.
When you're selling $5 floppies, you need either gimmicks or higher tier priced items. You know what I mean?
Yep.